And I'm going to count it down. 3, 2, 1, and we are live. And welcome everyone to the live stream show. We are here today with Benji Travis, and I'm super excited to have him join us all the way from Seattle. I'm sitting here on the opposite coast in Boston. And what I invited Benji to talk about was content creation that not only grabs people's attention, but actually will keep them watching your stuff all the way until the end and keep them coming back. So in short, creating content that your audience will love and keep showing up for. And by way of introduction, Benji is someone who doesn't just have one channel on YouTube. He actually has 3 channels, and he started actually on his wife's channel. It's Judy's Life. Is this actually super successful? It's a daily family vlog. And I have a number of questions of sort of how that goes and how he and his family is able to do this. But there's over 1.5 million people who are subscribed to this channel. That channel has received something like over 1 billion views.
Crazy.
which is totally amazing. But in addition to that, you know, he also has this passion for food. And so the Benji TV's channel is Benji showing his passion for being in the kitchen and cooking up really good stuff to eat. And that channel is doing really well. It has over 500,000 people subscribed to it. And then 3, Benji joined forces with his friend Sean Cannell. And the 2 of them actually initially, as I understand it, set off to write a book. And to help that out, wanted to grow their audience for the book. That channel that they created together is called Video Influencers. And the 2 of them have gone out and interviewed some of the most successful video creators on the planet on that channel. So another big successful, arena to be playing in. So huge accomplishment, a big kudos, and welcome to the show, Benji.
Hey, well, thank you so much, Brad. I'm excited to be here, and I know that was a mouthful explaining what I do, but ultimately, it's my passion for YouTube that is strongest. Outside of my family, obviously, love my wife and my 4 beautiful daughters, but I think that this platform is amazing because we're talking 16 years of being relevant and continuing to grow its significance. And I'm telling you, this year more so than ever, there's more opportunity for people, even if you're just starting out.
Yeah. I'm right with you on that. And one of the things that I'd like to start with is that doing what you're doing, I can only kind of sort of imagine keeping track of 3 different channels, but just the thing that you're doing with your family is a lot. I mean, you guys are showing up really often. And not only that, you're showing it's like this ongoing reality show that you've created. And I just want to know, what are the challenges that you find in creating content for such a dedicated audience? And I want to mention that you guys have done some stuff off of YouTube in terms of you have a big Facebook following that's even greater than the YouTube following. It's 3 million people are following you on Facebook, which is phenomenal. So you've created this thing where you have this responsibility that's ongoing to keep your audience engaged with you. And how do you do that and balance it with not having it totally invade and take over your life?
Well, actually, it's the cliche answer, but authenticity is what's important. We're really passionate about what we do and what we share, and because of it, it flows easily out of us. We aren't faking something. We're not trying to do something just for the sake of views. My wife, her biggest passions outside of being married to me is motherhood, taking care of the kids, being at home, cooking. She also loves beauty. So she talks about beauty products, makeup looks, hairdos. That's actually how she started. So for me personally, again, back to what you mentioned about the food, we are literally just sharing with the world what it is that we're interested in. And I'm sure you can relate to this. Whenever you're doing something that is fun. It's natural. It comes like without any effort, and you could do it every day. That's why people say, hey, find something you enjoy doing and you'll never work a day in your life. And I think YouTube is the exact same way. It is crazy to me, Brett. I'm telling you, like when you say 1 billion views and we've uploaded 4,000 plus videos, I could have never imagined back in 2008 that would be the case. But I believe a lot has to do with the fact that what I said, we're just authentically sharing what it is we're passionate about. And if you can do the same thing, you'll upload more videos than you ever thought you could, just because it comes so naturally.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if you're, and it seems like you're able to do this, you are enjoying yourselves while you're on camera. You're doing stuff that you like doing. In the case of what you're doing with your family, you guys are doing what you guys would be doing and having fun doing it, presumably. And so, I think that energy is very infectious. Like it's just, you've got enthusiasm for something. That enthusiasm is contagious. And there might be a formula that you have.
Yeah, the formula I would say is this. I used to do real estate. That was a profession I was in before I got into YouTube, and I did love it. I mean, I was in it because not only did I start off flipping homes when I was very young, but also you can make a lot of money. But was it what I was very passionate about? No. And so my wife, similarly, she went to school to be a child psychologist. She loves children, but did she want to be a doctor? No. And so when her and I fell into YouTube, for us, it was very obvious. This is a platform that's going to basically exaggerate whatever you're passionate about and connect you with the audience that's also interested in that. So the formula is this. I always tell people, if you're just starting out a channel and you have no clue where to start, think about the thing you have the most fun doing every single day. What is it that you look forward to doing after work? Because the secret sauce is there. Say you've got a 9 to 5 and you're working every day and you enjoy work, and that's how you pay for the bills, that's how you pay for your lifestyle. But maybe gardening is the thing you run home to. You look forward to the weekends, Brad, because here in the Northwest right now, it's super sunny. I'm going to the nursery. I love growing tomatoes from a little seed, and I'm so excited about. So maybe that is what your channel should be about. Oftentimes, the reason people get burnt out or they're not finding traction or success with YouTube is because they're just not in the right niche. They're not in the right topic. Now, this might be kind of a harsh wake up call for somebody doing something that they're not passionate about, but that is the truth. And what I find with the most successful creators that create a sustainable business around what they love, they're just doing whatever it is that comes so naturally to it. So that's where I would start. If you're in a profession and maybe you're using YouTube as a utility, you just have to have as much fun as possible and bring out your personality. So this is something that just happens over time. It takes a lot of practice. When I first went live, I was very awkward, on camera. I remember the first time I really went live was about 2011, and I was like deer in the headlights. Now being live hundreds of times. I actually did a live stream for 24 hours in my life, year after year after year, for charity with my wife. I got really comfortable on camera. So between those two things, that's where some of the secrets lay in terms of being successful and creating the kind of content that people connect with.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay, so I'm really curious about the story of your collaboration with Sean Cannell.
Yeah.
And just like I've heard you talk about it in a couple different places, but just fill me in a little bit, of the history of you two guys got together. Somehow you decided, okay, well, why don't we write a book? Why don't we use our experience with going on YouTube and write a book about YouTube? And in fact, you guys are watching, the book is called YouTube Secrets, and I highly recommend it. I've been listening to it all week. And you can get an Audible version of it. And so, and initially, as I understand, you wanted to call the book Video Influencers.
That's right.
And you decided, well, maybe we should try and find some people who would want to read this book. So tell me that story.
Yeah, well, I met Sean Cannell in 2010, and he actually shot the proposal that I had for my wife back then. And we just started off in YouTube, basically. Our relationship was tied to our interest in this platform. So it was natural to us to not only realize the significance, but, basically receive all these blessings from it, whether it was for him gigs in his videography business. He eventually got a job because of what he learned on YouTube and he was doing online. And for me, of course, my wife and I, we became full-time vloggers, and we lived a lifestyle that was way crazier and way more abundant than I could have ever dreamed of. And so we wanted to give back to the community that gave to us. And we thought, hey, let's write a book and we're going to call it Video Influencers. But Sean wasn't necessarily as known in the industry yet. He wasn't an expert. For me, I was known as a lifestyle vlogger, and I was doing some recipes on my food channel. So we thought, let's try to connect with the audience that would resonate with what we want to write, and let's prove the principles in it. So that's why we started Video Influencers. And part of the way we were going to not only prove our principles, but even get better principles and hear other people's success stories was interview other creators, other influencers who are succeeding. So in that journey, which took us, we thought was going to be 6 months to write the book, took us 4 years, Brad, to write that book. We met a lot of amazing people. We had a ton of great interviews. And not only did we prove our principles, I would argue the book turned out to be even better. And during that journey, what we realized was YouTube was truly king of the hill. And that's why we renamed the book from Video Influencers to YouTube Secrets, because it was very clear to us, even though we felt video was significant on all platforms, including here. I know we're on LinkedIn, we're on some other platforms, but YouTube was the place to be. And I would say we were right, because we published in 2018, and in 2021, there is even more attention on the videos on YouTube than ever before.
Yeah, I really applaud that strategy of literally going out into the world and asking lots of questions and finding, like, showing that yes, this can be done, and look at us doing it. Like, just literally proving the model in the moment over time with experimentation, and then bringing out to your audience, here's what we've learned, and we're going to share it all with you. That's terrific.
Mm-hmm.
So the question I have is, you were able to speak with a number of pretty top line people in the space, people like Gary Vaynerchuk, for instance. And in fact, I heard, as I was doing some research of stuff you've been up to, I heard an interview where he was actually interviewing you.
Yeah.
And he said, you're this one guy. There's only like a few people that I can count on one hand who I've been with like more than 5 times like this. And you're one of them. So you've been able to establish relationship with people like him. And, can you speak to that? Like, how did the two of you, at the time that you were starting this out, like 4 years before the book was published, how did you get the attention of all these folks, all these other creators?
Well, man, thank you so much. And yeah, that kind of shocked me when he said that. Not just because, well, I mean, it was true. Like, I've actually interacted with him many times since 2008 in different ways, but just because of who he is. But let me start with, how I was able to connect. Number one, my wife and I, we had been vlogging for about 5 years at that point. We've uploaded hundreds of videos. So I think other influencers see that and they recognize, hey, this guy is serious, right? This is something he loves, and I definitely loved it. The number one tip I would give is follow and consume their content. So the people you want to reach out to, don't just reach out to them just for the sake of, getting a big name on your show. Like, really follow them and consume their content, and make sure you understand what it is. Like you did, I mean, you read my book, you were listening to it, you knew a little bit of the history of video influencers. The second thing is really engage with these people and add value to the conversation on their platforms, because it's only a matter of time. I'm sure, Brad, you've seen this. People that engage with you on social media, you probably resonate with them more than the person that doesn't. right? And it's
Yeah.
it's really it's that simple. And so I was always engaging, I was always adding value. I wasn't just like, hey, me. I was like replying to their posts, replying to other people as well. Another thing that actually happens is during that like that journey of connecting with these influencers, you realize what's important to them. And so let's go ahead and talk about Gary. One of the ways I was able to get on his radar is whenever he would come out with a book, because I had influence, because I have this platform like video influencers, I was able to promote that book to my audience. Now, that's a no brainer for him. That's a no brainer for me. The point is, I was planting those seeds years before. So don't do this right now and think like in the next 30 days you'll connect with them, though that can be done. It's just I was always playing the long game, the marathon. And then the last thing I would say is, like you mentioned, do your homework before you go on there. And this is why, because the initial interview, right? And I was interviewing all my friends who are already YouTubers, successful influencers, and I would do homework on them because I wanted those interviews to be very valuable. When I watch podcasts, I know that the podcasts that are the most interesting is when you get those deeper conversations around topics that kind of almost surprise the guests. And so I wanted to do that with every single person. I want to show them, number one, that I really cared and I was serious about what they bring to the table. And I want to bring in valuable discussions, not just surface level stuff. So those are the three things I would say that's going to help you get better guests if you are an interview show, which is really powerful because, like you said, Gary Vaynerchuk, I would call him definitely a good friend. However, his influence is so massive that beyond our relationship, I've been exposed to so many people because of those interviews. And that's just one of many, many interviews that have been valuable. Even every person, including yourself, Brad, I know that I'm on your show right now, but I'm being exposed to the people that you know, the people that follow you. So every interview for me is a chance to reach an audience, reach somebody that I don't have a connection with. And this is why interviews are so powerful.
Yeah. I mean, the video influencers model was a growth strategy to build your audience and a following for this new project that you guys were embarking
That's
on.
right.
It worked out beautifully. So, what could you share now that you've done however many interviews you have done as a co-host of the show? What can you offer in terms of like, okay, so if somebody's out there saying, okay, well, I would like to set off and start doing an interview series on video, what should I be thinking about in terms of how to conduct interviews that will be valuable for people? Because it's a tricky thing, especially on a platform like YouTube. Long form interview content isn't necessarily the most popular. People like Joe Rogan are able to pull it off, but the rest of us mere mortals, we have to work a little harder.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Joe Rogan because he is definitely one of the more famous, more significant influencers in the space of podcasting and on YouTube. What he did for that community was amazing. But remember, Joe Rogan didn't just start out day one of podcasting or YouTube videos, and he actually started out on Ustream when he was going live, just as a mere mortal, as you would say. He already was a celebrity. He already built a lot of relationships. He was hustling all over the country doing stand-up comedy. So he had built up an influence before he ever went live. It might not have been like A-list celebrity, however, arguably more than the average person. And everyone forgets that. It is hard to start an interview show or a podcast with zero audience. And so that's what I would say focus on first. Sean and I, we're all about like swinging for the stands and hitting those home runs, but it's all about the singles and the doubles. It's about getting base. It's about winning that first game and then eventually the World Series. And what I mean is, if you're going to start out as an interview show, interview whoever you can and treat that person like they were a celebrity, because everyone has something to offer to the conversation if the conversation is focused. A more practical tip when you're interviewing people is listen. Like, let the person talk. One thing about Joe Rogan, again, and he's such a great example of this. How is it that he talks to so many different people across all walks of life and still ends up always giving value to the audience? Well, it's because he's literally letting the guest do the heavy lifting. He sometimes just says like one sentence to follow up a point, or maybe re-emphasize something they said, or ask a question. Then he lets them talk. Of course, Joe Rogan does talk a lot, but I would say even me, I'm working on this to this day, Brad, is I just tee the guest up and I just listen. And I'm not just listening for the sake of hearing the words they're saying. I'm really looking out for those like gold nuggets that I know the audience really wants to know that maybe they don't get a chance to share. And I'm just digging. In fact, I actually do this with anybody I know. I like to know about you, the person that's sitting in front of me, more than I want to tell you about me. And so I think if you have that principle and you have that philosophy, not just in interviews but in life, you'll have much more engaging conversations, which ultimately lead to better interviews that people want to listen into and follow you for. So start now, knowing that one day you can be a Joe Rogan, but there's a long road between starting from zero and being like the best in the business.
Yeah, I know that one thing that I've seen you doing in this interviewing process is being able to go, and of course we can only look forward to this right now because all the conference world is pretty much closed for the moment. But in the past, and probably not in the too distant future, we'll be able to go to conferences again. And you guys have been really good about, when you attend a conference, being able to line up interviews during those events. And so could you talk about that strategy just a little bit?
Man, you're bringing me back. It's been a while since John and I did that. But, that was a hustle in the early years. And even though I did have relationships, it's not like I knew everybody at these events. We would work. Oftentimes we were invited to speak or we were attending ourselves, but we didn't take a break. In fact, I need a glass of water right now, but this is how I felt literally for like 3 or 4 days in a row, because we were working our buns off, not only to get into conversations and meet new people. We're figuring out who is somebody that has something to offer to our audience. And I remember some days I'd be holding the camera and the microphone, and Sean was often doing that because, of course, he started off as the videographer. He was a guy handling the tech. And then as years went by, we would have our teams come, but we were just working. And what other people said would like get them burnt out at conferences and make them go back to the room and take a nap. We just were not waiting for anything. We were just 24/7. We were working. The only thing we would do to take a break was to eat and to sleep. But we were literally there not only to gain the knowledge from the event itself, but to get these interviews. Our goal was to get content. And this kind of goes back to our geographic location. So you mentioned I'm here in the Seattle, Washington area. He moved to Las Vegas early in our relationship. So we had to make the most of our time together at these events. So we were batch producing. We literally looked at it like, hey, every single interview we get, that's a week we knock off that we don't have to work later. And so I think our best event, we got like 22 interviews or something like that.
Wow.
And so you're talking months and months of content. By the way, it wasn't all interviews. Sometimes we do talking head, and we would stay one day later. Everybody's leaving, going back home, and we just stay one day later and we knock out 3 or 4 videos. So, I mean, we did that out of necessity, not understanding this is like the way a lot of people should be doing it, especially if you don't have a lot of time, because yeah, it really worked for us. And nowadays, I've got my studio, I go live. Sean does come back to the Northwest and we go live together. But yeah, we got a lot of work done because video influencers ultimately was our side hustle. It was a channel we did after we worked on our main channels, me being my vlog and my food channel, for him his Think Media channel. So it was amazing. We learned a lot from the experience, but the big takeaway is batch producing and just being relentless with your hustle.
Yeah, that's great. The whole batch producing thing, that's so valuable. Just, instead of this thing of like, next week, it's always in your face. What am I going to put out next week? It's like, if you have some stuff in the can, so to speak, you're in really good shape. So you just have been mentioning going live a couple of different times there. Can you describe how your live streaming fits in with your overall strategy and what that does in terms of audience engagement?
So for me, the live streaming is all about connection. The thing about broadcasting yourself in real time is the closest you can get to an in-person interaction. And this is why social media is such a big deal. You can actually connect with these celebrities. I'm not calling myself a celebrity, but anybody that follows me, whenever I do like maybe a co-live or I interview them, it kind of blows their mind like, hey, I'm actually talking to somebody I follow. And so going live is more about getting a deeper relationship with the audience. So that's just purely my strategy. There is no hidden motive. There isn't something I'm trying to accomplish. In the early days of YouTube Live, you could actually rank videos because YouTube understood like when you would go live, you would tend to have a longer watch times, which ultimately that's what YouTube is looking for. But now it's all about connection. I actually haven't gone live in a few weeks. I've been kind of, I don't know if you noticed, this kind of a new look in my studio. And so once I'm done with my rebrand, I will be going live again just to be connecting with people. And that's the power that somebody can ask a question and you'll answer it. That somebody knows that in that moment, Benji Travis or you, Brad, or right there in front of them, maybe not in person, but on the screen, right? Like you can see them, you're interacting with the other people in the audience. It's the closest in person. I think 2020 it was even more significant because there was this disconnect. I know this every time I would connect with another human in real life, anytime in 2020, it was like a special moment. So, live is the closest you can get to it. And always keeping that in mind because if you understand that, you'll treat every single second like gold versus a pre recorded, post edited upload. There is no connection. It's just pure value. You might connect with them as a person, but there's no real time connection. And that is really the golden nugget of going live. And that's why I broadcast.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, in fact, Candace is in the audience. She says she has a question. So, Candace, you want to post it, go right ahead. And anyone else who's watching right now, post your questions. This is your chance.
There you go.
So,
Shoot your shot.
I don't remember where I heard this and all the things that I've been listening to in this last week, but I heard you mention using live streaming for charity. And so, like, how have you been doing that? I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, so in 2011, Virgin Mobile at the time had a fundraising campaign to help homeless youth here in the United States. So my wife and I, we were invited to that along with some other YouTubers. In fact, some of them were my friends at the time, and we thought, hey, this is looks kind of fun, and it was all about having an incentive. And so for us, the goal was to raise $3,000. We thought, why don't we just go live? And why don't we just go live for 24 hours? I don't
Oh,
know where
wow.
that number came. I wish we picked like 8 hours, right? But we thought, hey, a full 24 hours would just go live. And we definitely raised that $3,000. In fact, we broke that and we raised $5,000 ultimately, which was amazing. And we thought, hey, there's something here. And so that kind of started off in this whole journey of going live for 24 hours once a year. It usually happened in December. And what we would do is we would dance for donations. So
Oh,
we
that's
would get
great.
when we would get a certain amount of donations, we would just dance to one of our favorite songs or the pick from the audience member. It was a fun thing that turned into this huge fundraising campaign called December, Dancing for Donations. So we did it every December. We did it for I want to say like 8 or 9 years. We've taken a break last year, but in our biggest year, we raised over $500,000. I think about 385,000 in a 24-hour period. And so that was a big deal to me because I come from a nonprofit background. I used to work at a YMCA, and raising $1,000 was mind numbing to me because we would have to ask people. But it kind of goes back to the connection and the value that you're giving. So it's going right back to how it started. And, my wife and I were most known as being family vloggers, and we share our life as a married couple, as our experience as parents. And so that audience feels connected because they probably also can relate to those experiences, or they connect with us. And so when we go live and we're sharing our life in real time, there's this strong connection, so that when we do ask for the donation, uh, it's easier for them to do that, because they feel like, these are people being authentic, they're really sharing what they're passionate about, I want to support them. And so we've actually supported different charities over the years, because we wanted to help people from all walks of life all over the country, but specifically kids. And so, I mean, there's just so much I could talk about there. The point is, again, if you want to create content that'll keep people's attention, and I remember the sometimes it was like 45 minutes was the average amount of time people were spending watching during that 24 hours. Create content that resonates with you first, that will probably resonate with a specific audience, and you have to find that connection. For us, we had built that audience for a number of years, and then we're able to have that fundraiser and raise all that money for our charity.
I just absolutely love the getting up and dancing when a certain
I'm not
amount.
going to dance for you right now, though. Okay, I haven't warmed up, but yeah, I love dancing, and so our audience knows that, and it was fun.
Yeah. Okay. So Candace has a question here. How to set interviews up to take deep personal shares public? My method is a deep transformational system related to overcoming crisis. Interesting question. What's your take on that?
Well, I'd say this: it all depends on you and your channel. So if you're a channel where you already do that, I think that's already assumed that you're gonna be doing that. So in the conversations leading up to it, it's kind of like teeing it up. And so the guests I would imagine, expect to do that. So I don't think it's as hard. But I think for me, because naturally I get into some deep conversations about even topics I wasn't expecting to address, part of the way I do that is I connect with that person. When I interview, even though I'm live and I know people are watching, or say I'm doing something, that's going to be post edited, when I'm sitting right there, right now, Brad, all I care about is the fact that I'm talking to you, and that there's this conversation that will be beneficial to somebody else, but the benefit is to you and I first. And so when I go to interview people, not only do I care about them, I've done my homeworks, such as how you did on me, but then I just get into the conversation a little bit more casual. I like to ask fun questions, maybe that the person that I'm interviewing has never been asked, or I'll dig up some stuff like way back in their past that maybe they haven't really gone down memory lane on. And so we start there. And if you kind of break down that fear that they might have, or that anxiety, sometimes that will ease you on in, and then you build it from there. And it's like lay down that foundation, and then you can really get deeper into those conversations, which might be hitting home, a little more emotion, and might be, something they don't want to start off at. You don't want to start off with the hard questions right up front. Like, like that's a scary thing for both you and the person you're interviewing.
Yeah, I found something that I've done fairly often is when I'm inviting a guest more open or more vulnerable, or tell a story that's more personal, I will tee it up by sharing my own story. By like nothing long, nothing, very in depth, but just saying, I'm willing to go where I'm asking you to go. And often by just showing a little bit of personal stuff or revealing something about myself, that helps break the ice and kind of creates the safe environment. And I think that seems to work pretty well.
Totally. When you're willing to show your cards first, it's more likely that that person is too. Especially if that person is nervous. I completely agree. I think that, again, it's all about connecting with people. Sometimes you have to be the first one to go, so that the other person feels more comfortable, and that they feel they're in a safe place.
Yeah. So I'm just got a comment here from Paul. He says, I like the model of ask something first, what's your favorite color, and then deeper into more vulnerable questions.
For sure. Yeah. Well, what's your favorite color should be really easy. Like I mentioned, I'm trying to think. Some like for example, Sean Cannell. Okay, Sean Cannell is somebody that I know really well, probably better than most people. If I was going to interview him on like say another show, I actually have this podcast that I just released called the Influencer Green Room, which I definitely want to plug. But if I was going to interview him, my first question that I know nobody really asks about is, tell me about how you got into the rap game. Because little do people know he is an amazing rap artist. I mean, it's not like he's going to make a career from it, but he does know how to. Hold his own, and so that I would start it there, because he'd be like, oh well, when I was like 17 years old, I listened to this artist. And again, like, it's fun. It kind of maybe throws you off, like wherever you're at. Sean has no problem answering questions. He's like natural when it comes to being on camera. But those are the type of questions I would ask somebody, again, to get them comfortable with the conversation.
Yeah, I love that. It's great. Okay, well, let's start wrapping this up. Tell people, now I mentioned your book, YouTube Secrets. If people want to grab that book, is there a place to go that's even better than, say, Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon, Audible, I think are the best places because everybody uses those. Please leave us a positive review if you like the book. Go to tubesecretsbook.com if you want a free bonus that comes along with the book. So that website is up there. But yeah, Amazon, Audible, that's where we usually tell people to go, just because we know that that's where people usually make all their purchases these days, with the success of Amazon, of course.
Yeah. And what about, like you just mentioned, the Influencers Green Room?
Yeah.
What if I want to listen to that?
So first off, Video Influencers is a YouTube channel that Sean and I started for the book YouTube Secrets. But I just launched a podcast with Liron Segev, and that's more of a casual conversation with influencers. So it's not specific to YouTube, because one thing I do believe is that influence is being built everywhere. We're talking not just YouTube, but Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, now Clubhouse. And so we're having conversations with influencers, and we're really getting into the topics and conversations that people want to hear. And so it's called the Influencer Green Room on any podcast platform. And we just started it about a month ago. Would love for you guys to check it out, subscribe to that. And those are the two places that you can find a lot of my content.
All right. Well, thank you again so much for joining today. This has been fabulous.
Thank you.
And for the rest of all you guys, thank you all for joining and for your questions. And don't forget, this show goes live every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And now the live stream show has been turned into an audio podcast. So if you would like to listen to these episodes while you are walking your dog, doing the dishes, running on a treadmill, or better yet, riding your bike into the next county, you can do so by just going to thelivestreamshow.com, and all those episodes are there, or you can find it on Apple Podcasts and every other podcast directory. So thanks again so much, everyone, for joining, and we will see you next week, Thursday at 3.